Go.
All right, so hello everybody. Welcome to our advisory committee agenda meeting tonight. There are just one really quick announcement we want to share. We know that earlier on we had made the determination to, sorry, I have a very loud dog in my house, and so if you hear him barking, sorry about that. But we had talked before about breaking up into our small groups, and we spent a lot of time as an administrative team trying to figure out if that would be appropriate at this stage in the process. And while that feedback and those groups that we were in was really useful when we were first gathering feedback and getting a really good idea of how to construct our hybrid plan, now that we are at the point of actually presenting that draft plan out to everybody in advance of our board presentation, those small groups really don't work. And so what we're going to do tonight is, rather than break down into those small groups and gather feedback, in isolated sessions, we want everybody to hear every bit of the feedback. And so we're going to do it all as a whole group. And I hope that makes sense for everybody, and that way everybody gets all the insights that everybody can bring into the room. So with that said, I think we can turn it over, right?
Thank you, Greg. So the goal for tonight, as Greg said, is to gather feedback from everyone. Everyone should have received the draft plan. The draft plan will be presented to the Board of Education on the 19th, this Thursday. And you also received, when you received the agenda, a draft of the board presentation. And so our hope is tonight that, based upon what you gathered when you read the plan, that when we do the presentation tonight, you'll be able to give us feedback on those key pieces that we may need to stress more, and or to give us some insight if we missed something that's in the plan that you believe, as parents, as community members, as students, and as members of the faculty and staff, that we really need to stress the importance of in the presentation. Today, we presented it to the steering committee for some feedback. On Thursday, we will also present it to the district's administrative group and the board, gather some more feedback, then present it to you again. No, we won't, yeah. I think we'll present it to you again on the 1st before we present it to the board as a final document. So tonight is for feedback on those key pieces. We will have members from the steering committee here also, if there are some questions for clarification that you need to also ask us. And so with that, let's get into the presentation. Can you make it a little bit bigger, Mike? A little bit more. There you go. Thank you. So we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight as we present the Reimagine Education OPRF 2020-2021 Hybrid Learning Plan for second semester. Next slide. Our agenda tonight will cover background information, reminders to the community if we're going to come back into being in person, the reopening stages and metrics, our hybrid learning schedule, the health and safety protocols, and we'll discuss next steps. I want to say that tonight's presentation is the high-level items from our plan, but if you look at the plan, there's more detail and a lot more information. I do want to note, too, that you will see some things that were similar to the first semester plan, because those are constant within the second plan as well. Next slide, please. I want to start by saying, while priority one is to safeguard the health and safety of students, staff, and families while providing excellence and equity for all our students, the overarching goal for all of us, our parents, our faculty and staff, our administration, and our Board of Education, is that we get all of our students in school as soon as possible. But we all also realize we have to do that in a safe and healthy manner. And so it is our hope that through our hybrid, we will, over the course of second semester, be able to bring allow our students the opportunity for some in-person instruction over the course of the second semester. So I'll start with last July, as we prepared for the 2021 school year, we made an extremely difficult decision. And that decision was to implement a remote learning plan for the entire first semester. And while I know some people may not agree, right, we believed it was in the best interest of our students and our staff to keep them safe. This to us was the safest option for protecting students and staff while allowing as much preparation and as little schedule disruption as possible. It was the right plan for us, and we heard tons of feedback that our teachers have done an outstanding job with remote instruction. The next step was always for us to create a hybrid plan. The Illinois State Board of Education, or ISB, mandates that we have a hybrid plan. ISB strongly recommends that schools provide in-person instruction as much as safely possible. And I think we all agree that in-person instruction is the best, but it has to be under safety conditions. So as we look towards the second semester, a hybrid plan is what we have drafted. Approximately 120 individuals have spent dozens of hours contributing their expertise and feedback to this plan. This includes students, parents, teachers, staff members, administrators, board members, representatives from District D90 and D97, and medical experts. Their contributions have been invaluable. Essential to our planning has been a joint guidance from ISB and the Illinois Department of Public Health, as well as health and safety guidance from the Center for Disease Control, Governor Pritzker's Restore Illinois Plan, and the Oak Park Department of Public Health. Our primary focus has remained unchanged, to safeguard the health and safety of students, staff, and families while providing excellence and equity for all of our students. With this hybrid plan, our goal is to have students learning in school as soon as possible while providing the safest possible environment for students and staff. Next slide. It takes a village, and I want to stress that even though we have a hybrid learning plan in place, being able to implement this plan depends on the entire community's cooperation. We need everyone to wear a mask when outside their households. We need everyone to maintain social distancing of at least 6 feet. We need everyone to practice good hand hygiene by washing often with soap and water for 20 seconds. We need every single person in Oak Park and River Forest to avoid unmasked indoor gatherings with anyone outside of their household. Such gatherings have been a common source of the local COVID-19 outbreaks, especially among teenagers. Only by working together will we be able to mitigate the risk of COVID-19 and bring our Husky family back together in in-person instruction. Next slide.
So our decisions about reopening are based first and foremost on protecting the health and safety of our students and staff. This slide illustrates the 4 stages, the 4 OPRF stages of reopening, and it includes the metrics that we'll use from both the county and the local community to guide decision-making about moving from one reopening stage to another. These threshold metrics are based on recommendations from the Illinois Department of Public Health, input from the medical experts on our advisory committee who met for many hours to hash these out, and examples from other high school districts. It's important to note these are guidelines, not hard and fast rules. In general, 3 of the 5 metrics shifting to place us in a different stage will prompt consideration of switching to that stage. This aligns with the Cook County Department of Public Health guidance regarding adaptive pauses, which are closures due to cases of COVID-19, which obviously we are in an adaptive pause now. And we also, so we have a calculator. In looking at these different metrics, we have our school metrics, we have our Oak Park and River Forest community metrics, and then we have the county metrics. And we have a calculator that weights these factors to help us in our decision making. So the health department recommends that if region or county metrics conflict with more localized data, school administrators should approach decision making with a more conservative lens.
Next slide.
Okay, so let's take a close look at what our daily schedule and our hybrid plan actually looks like from what will be a lived experience from our students. So after considering a variety of options for the plan, including models from other districts, we have settled on one that is aligned to the semester 1 remote learning schedule of classes that we currently have in place. We want to stress too regarding our current schedule that we will remain on the schedule that we have been using for remote learning right now until we are able to implement this hybrid plan. So as you heard Karen talk about those metrics a little while ago, we don't know exactly when the metrics are going to kick in to allow us to implement this hybrid plan. So when we start second semester, anticipate, at least for the first week and then beyond, as you'll hear, that we will be in our current schedule until we can transition. The daily schedule for hybrid learning under the new hybrid plan will maintain the A-day, B-day schedule we have used for remote learning with adjustments to the times that each 1 hour period begins and ends. We will be going back to the 8 a.m. start with 5-minute passing periods between classes. We've heard a lot of feedback that folks really did appreciate the 9 a.m. start time and 30 minutes in between class periods. It just isn't possible when you are in a hybrid model, however. We want to avoid having students eat lunch on campus as much as possible. And this schedule allows us to finish that 4-period day each day in time to do so. We will still offer lunch, however, for our diverse learners and a small group of students who will be in the building through the afternoon for supports. The vast majority of students will leave the building at lunchtime though. You can see that in our hybrid schedule here in the grid that we have added back a daily advisory period between second and third period. This is in response to the feedback that having it before school simply wasn't working for our students. And we heard that feedback loud and clear. We also heard feedback from our students, though, that they do want a more personal connection with their peers and teachers and staff while traversing their school day. So we're kind of revamping the approach to that advisory period to allow a sequence of activities Monday through Friday to provide exactly that. And so having that advisory will allow students to connect in this schedule, hopefully a little more effectively than they were during the fall semester.
Next slide.
Okay, so prior to winter break, in the next few weeks here, families will have an opportunity to choose whether to opt their students into on-site classes or opt them out and remain fully remote. When we put out the survey before, it was for us to get a basic percentage of who was opting in and who wasn't opting out, and for us to understand that data demographically. Now we need the real answers for folks as we prepare for second semester, which will begin on January 11th. All right, that's the first day that students could be in attendance, that will be in attendance. We will start the semester, as I referenced earlier, in remote learning though, on the same daily schedule as I noted that we've been following for this first semester. The soonest that we might start hybrid classes would be on January 19th. This is after the Martin Luther King holiday. And this will allow our staff and families time to quarantine or at least limit their contacts after any holiday travel. I want to stress though that the exact date we can launch a hybrid plan has not been determined. You're going to hear that multiple times throughout the presentation tonight because we feel it's critical information to send out. And again, the metrics will guide when we can launch that hybrid plan. On the next slide here, let's take a look at what the day-to-day, or I should say the weekly schedule is going to look like. It is going to look different. We want to preface anything here by trying to push out this understanding that the type of in-person learning that our students are going to be able to experience and that our teachers are going to be able to provide is just fundamentally different in a hybrid model than what it is and what we've all known for regular in-person learning. First of all, we can have a maximum of 25%, or about 850 of our student population in the building at any one time. The other 75% of students will be learning online remotely in the exact same lesson as those who are in person. So you're gonna have a divided student population getting the exact same lesson at the exact same time. This means the types of instructional activities that we're all accustomed to during a regular year simply won't be possible in a hybrid environment. It will require instructional adjustments. Students who are opted in for on-site classes will be assigned to one of 4 groups that will rotate through an on-site schedule. As you can see on this sample monthly schedule here, students will be on-site 2 days in a row, followed by remote learning for the next the next 6 days. So 2 days on, 6 days off. This allows each cohort of students, each 25% cohort of students, to go periods 1 through 8 before the next cohort comes in. Classrooms can hold on average about 8 to 10 students, with our smaller classrooms holding fewer students. A figure that we assessed and were able to determine by visiting all of our classrooms, determining capacity based off of square footage, and then determining a 6-foot distance between all people in the classroom. In the hybrid setting, teachers will have one lesson that they use for both students in the classroom and for students at home. And students and teachers will wear masks at all times while they're in this in-person environment. And so that's one change that, while it's not necessarily going to affect the instructional environment, it's really important that folks know that when 75% of our kids are at home engaging in this remote synchronous learning experience, they're going to be seeing a teacher who has that mask on, which does affect how instruction is picked up a little bit. And we're just stressing that because we want to be as transparent as possible about what this will feel like, what this will look like. So,
thank you. So within our plan, we've included some very detailed health and safety protocols for all who enter the building. So here are just some highlights. Before entering the building, every individual will need to complete the COVID symptom screener using the district's health self-certification app. Every individual also must undergo a temperature screening at the entrance. Individuals who have a temperature greater than 100.4 may not enter the building. Mask and social distancing will be required for all persons in the building at all times. In addition, the district is pursuing a contract to implement weekly saliva testing for students and for staff. This is a screening test that has a good success rate into identifying asymptomatic carriers for COVID-19. This is not a diagnostic test. In the event that a person does result, in the event that a positive result on the saliva test, the person will need to follow up for a diagnostic test. We will follow the IDPH exclusion guidance for quarantining when someone has been exposed or tested positive for COVID-19. In positive cases, that person will need to submit a release from isolation letter received by our local health department. I also want to include that within our building, we have a wealth of signage and floor markings throughout the building, reminding everyone about mask wearing, social distancing, and hand washing. We have installed directional arrows in all of our hallways and stairways to minimize contact between students during passing periods. Campus safety staff members will be deployed to help monitor passing periods and bathrooms, and all available staff will help when passing periods as well. To ensure that classrooms are sanitized between classes, we'll be providing each classroom with cleaning supplies for students to disinfect their area before exiting the classroom. Students then entering the classroom will also clean their area before the class begins. For the majority of our classrooms in the building, we have upgraded the air filtration to a MERV 13 filtering system. MERV, which stands for Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value, rates air filters on a scale of 1 to 16 to indicate their ability to capture particles between 0.3 and 10 microns. The MERV 13 is efficient in capturing airborne viruses, including SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. Of roughly 170 classrooms that will be used for hybrid learning, the air handlers for all but 35 are being upgraded to use MERV 13 filters. In the rooms where the air filters can't accommodate MERV 13 filters due to their age, we will be providing HEPA air filter systems. There are many, many more details about our health and safety protocols in the plan. In summary, we will do everything possible to make sure our building is as safe and possible for our students and for our staff. In closing, I want to stress again that we will start our second semester in remote on the schedule we have now, and that we will follow that. The soonest we can start our hybrid will be January the 19th. Again, this is to allow for our students and families that have traveled and our faculty that have traveled. Could you go to the next slide, please? To have the opportunity to safely be at home. The exact date we can launch the hybrid plan has yet to be determined. The metrics will guide us in that. But in closing, again, we all want our students to be on site. We all know that the best education is that delivered in person. We just have to do it in a safe and healthy manner. Thank you, and we're now open for questions. There were some things in the chat box. So before we open for the group feedback, I'm going to go into the chat. We have from Dr. Barbados, it's important to make clear that the goal of hybrid learning is not to provide the same kind of learning that these kids had before school in person. The goal is to provide some other learning opportunities for kids that don't learn well remotely. It is to allow kids to have some connections with other students and to physically lay eyes on their teachers. There is much evidence in the literature that this is vital for some learners. So that's good to put into the document in the presentation. Thank you for that. And then Maya, I saw you were in the chat, but I don't know what you tried to put in, so let me see.
The question is, Maya's question was, what are the options for teachers that are at risk?
Okay,
so we can definitely add that to the plan as well.
Yeah. Are you asking, are you asking that question now, or you just suggested we make sure that's in the plan? I don't know what I can't see her, so I'm not sure what she's saying. But Maya, we do have, we are looking at accommodations for teachers who are possibly at risk. And so that will also be included in the plan. And I do think Dr. Barbados' comments are spot on as part of our presentation as well.
Yeah, I've pasted the comments into the notes, and I will put it into the talking points.
Okay, Mike, you want to go back to the agenda? So we figured it would take about 20 minutes for the presentation, and we allotted an hour for feedback from the group. So now we open it for feedback. I am going to go full screen if I can. I can't because the screen is being shared. We have from Ms. Anderson for positive student metrics is that 0 to 6 students per week. That's for the hybrid option. I'm gonna pull it up on my.
Yeah, those were weekly.
Those were what? I didn't hear you, Karen.
I think we decided those would be weekly metrics.
Right,
Yes.
not cumulative.
Yeah.
Yes.
if you want to raise your hand or write in the chat box, I will try to identify who has their hand raised. We have from Sarah Spivey, how is teaching? Greg or Lloyd, because Greg, I know you're going to have to step out, but it says, how is teaching going to be different beyond the mask wearing? And how will teachers integrate teaching by both remote and in-person students? Dr. Fiorenza, do you want to respond to that one?
Lori's not in the call tonight, actually. Yeah, so
okay.
yeah, I can respond to that here if I can. So,
and you can wait. I was just putting that in there as something to think about for the actual, for the presentation to the board. So
Okay.
don't feel like
Absolutely.
you have to. Thanks.
You know, I don't know. I just like. I wouldn't mind getting feedback on a response because in some ways teaching is going to it's going to be very different depending on what the class is, right, and how that individual type of class is affected by this hybrid environment. But one thing to really keep in mind about how I just want to point out that we are linked to our devices at this point for that instruction, and so teachers, for example, in a math class, they are crafting their notes now on their device as they're illustrating examples and modeling how to move through different problems. And so that no longer is that done necessarily on a whiteboard because it's so much better for the folks at home to get access to that on their device. And so the kids who are in the class are going to be looking at their devices to understand what that modeling looks like, rather than a whiteboard or whatever other mode a teacher might typically use. That's just one small way to illustrate that just because we're gonna have a cohort in-house doesn't mean that that cohort is completely divorced from their device, right? That's a key point. And then imagine how that plays out in all sorts of other classes besides just a simple math class, and you begin to get an idea of what a hybrid experience really might look like.
We're looking into technology so that when there are situations such as maybe in the science lab and the teacher has to move around, that the camera will be able to follow that teacher as the teacher delivers instruction. But because teachers will be teaching simultaneously remote and in person, we just wanted to be transparent that that does not mean that the in-person instruction, the devices go away.
Yeah.
And do you think, is it also important to mention things, and I'm actually putting this out to the group, like the teacher's going to have to remain pretty stationary, like they won't be able to walk around the room and assist students like they normally might. You know, small groups can't be small groups in person. They could, you know, virtually. So are those things worth mentioning as well?
I mean, what I would say is that it's limited there, right? It's going to be limiting. So the type of movement and the teacher moving around the classroom is going to be there's going to be some governors on that, not only because you have kids at home watching it on their computers or engaging that way, but also because of just the physical realities of the classroom and what type of movement is realistic and safe. So yes, but to say that it's impossible, right, for teachers to move around, and to say that in an absolute sense, which is not what you said, Karen, but I want to illustrate that saying that in an absolute sense wouldn't be right either, right? So we're going to have to figure these things out in this hybrid mode.
That's part of the research on cameras. The next question I'm going to send to Chris, it's about microphones. Will teachers have microphones with their, I think it's either with their devices or without their devices? Chris? Oh, he's on the phone.
Sorry,
I'm
it's
sorry.
just
That was,
right with you.
there was a question, okay.
I got, okay, let me call you back.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about that. Could you repeat the question?
The question was, will teachers have microphones? Because we were talking about being able to move around the room, and I mentioned that we were looking into devices or technology that would allow, in like for the science lab, the camera to follow the teacher as he or she did some instruction. And one of the questions was, will they have microphones because they'll have the mask on?
Yeah, the microphone and speaker system is included in the technology package that we're bringing forward for consideration. So there's, if you have multiple microphones in the room, you're going to have feedback. So you need, the audio is very important to be able to have a mic that can pick up as much of what's going on in the room as possible, and a single point where that speaker is coming from as well, and have that compatible so that one isn't feeding into the other. The camera that that we're looking at has the ability to be controlled with a remote, so it does have some ability to pan back and forth, move up and down, zoom in and out. So it's not so much a tracking camera as one that can be positioned to where the teacher needs it to be showing, whether that be a whiteboard or be them themselves. But all of that is included in the package that we're bringing forward.
I'm going to ask, because there's two, when I'm looking on my screen, there's two screens, and I can only see one at a time. So you may want to put something in the chat box or just say, I have a question. We have something from JP. It just says on teaching in a hybrid model. And then Misty Olson is after that. Yes, JP?
Just some of the questions that were asked. Granted, I have not worked with one of those cameras. I teach history and have 25 to 28 students typically in a class. I don't know if I need a camera. I think for feedback, probably having my headphones on to teach to the kids back offers less distractions for them, as well as the students who are also going to be in the room. And I can be pretty loud too when I need to be. But how I'm going to interact with students, like I was in my room the other night just trying to see like how a setup might look, and we're just going to have to find, it's got to be the same lesson. I can't ever perceive teaching two separate lessons and keeping students on track, but finding those little downtimes to interact with the 6 or 7 students in my room is going, like, opener or the exit ticket at the start of class. Those are opportunities to engage group. We're doing group work with the breakout rooms now in a history class, and having maybe the students socially distanced in the same room in that group seems like a pretty reasonable model, so they can at least engage with each other. They're not going to be, it's going to be a different environment, but they will have a quiet space there because the other groups will be, off. So it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to, as a faculty, we're already, I was meeting with the team after school today. We're already trying to like plan how this will look, and be able to make connections with our students in our rooms while providing a quality learning experience for the students on the side.
And if I could respond on the camera question, if there's anything outside of the device that you want to do, the embedded camera is not going to be sufficient. And as far as audio goes, because I have done distance classrooms, I've had quite a couple of decades of experience with that. Your audio is always your biggest problem. While you may be loud enough, while you may be able to hear, the student at the back of the room can't be the one, is the one that we need to be able to, accommodate, that we need to have some way for that student to be picked up in the back of the room. Similar to how you hear my daughter opening up a package right now, because I've got a speaker system here with a microphone embedded, you're able to hear that. But if you are relying on just something that's hooked up to a headphone, it's not going to pick that up in the room. So that's some of the things that have to be built into the technology solution in order to make it effective in the classroom.
Misty?
Sure. Thanks. Okay, a couple of mine are just food for thought, a couple of questions. For opt-in purposes, if we see a comparable opt-in percentage to what we saw in the initial survey, which was roughly, I believe, 65%, and if 800 students are our max, would there be any consideration to then putting in as opposed to a 4 cohorts going down to a 3 cohort system to get more kids in more frequently?
Yeah, so if I can jump in on this, and other people might have information to add as well. We need flexibility, and I want to illustrate what that means, right? So what's so different about the 25% capacity is from like an elementary classroom is the kids are stationary, right? The kids are in their room in an elementary environment. They're not transitioning. Here they're transitioning, and it's impossible for all of those transitions from one period to the next to be clean, meaning that 8 kids here, these 8 kids here. I mean, there's gonna be mixing and matching.
Oh, sure.
Right. So in order to allow for that kind of play from period to period, we have to be a little bit under, right, the capacity for each of our rooms, because we know it's sometimes we're going to be a little bit over. Now, so what I fully anticipate is that we're going to have enough families who want to participate, that we're within that sweet spot where this 25% cohort is the way to go. But your question forces us to recognize, of course, right, that if we get a much lower turnout than we anticipate, that we could increase the frequency of the rotations down the road. So we're going to have to leave room out to be adaptive if we do go down that road. But if we are in about the 2/3 population, right, we're almost certainly going to stay with these 25% cohorts.
Gotcha.
For that reason.
And then kind of a follow-on to that, will people be opting in for the entire semester, or will people be able to opt in by quarter?
Right now, our goal is to opt in for the semester.
Right. And then,
Because we're doing scheduling, we have to have something in place that assures that we stay within our classroom and building capacity.
and then what would families' options be if they said, oh, you know what, my kid hates hybrid. I opted in, but you know what, it's not working either. We want to go back remote. Are we going to allow that kind of flexibility?
Yes.
And then I think that's, in that being the case, then that would probably be something, I mean, you don't want people flip-flopping, but also understanding for the families who opt in that if it's not working, right, that they're not stuck. All right, and then my last 2 comments are purely things to think.
One thing that came up today, and I think we need to be clear though, the opposite way. Like if you opt for remote, we can't have people trying to opt into hybrid later.
Right.
Great point. Okay, my last 2 things are just food for thought. One is for, you know, breakout rooms. You know, would there be any benefits of having one of the in-person kids be in the breakout room with the remote kids, and then having like that in-person kid kind of be that liaison to those at-home folks to kind of loop them in? And I don't know, that's a educational thing, but I thought that might be interesting. And then one.
I do think, and Greg, you may want to chime in, and Kennedy, I think that's an option that teachers will always have if they want to do it, because they do breakout groups now. And they have the latitude to develop breakout groups for, as you said, students who will be in person and students who will be remote.
Yeah, because I mean, I was just having a conversation with my daughter. She's like, if I'm in person or if I'm at home, it'd be cool if in my breakout room was somebody in my actual classroom, right? So that was her thought. And then her other question, which I will bring up, which is one, parents will have testing, right? You know, how, I'm assuming on a test day, some portion of kids will take the test in the classroom and some portion of kids would be testing at home. But kids will tell you there is advantages, whether there should be or not, they are taking advantage of situations where they are testing at home. So are the kids in person who are testing at a disadvantage, right? But just again, a little tactical thing I never thought of, but my daughter's like, well, I don't want to take a test in the class. It's way better to take the test at home. But it does bring up a conundrum of sorts. So just something to think about.
Yeah, Misty, that's a great point. And I know our teachers have been wrestling with that idea. We've gotten questions about that. And JP, I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I really liked your answer before about differentiation. You can still differentiate even though you're doing one lesson. And so I don't know if differentiation is part of how you might want to approach this one as well.
Yeah, we've basically, in the history department, we've eliminated tests that you can have advantages at home on. So stuff you can Google. So like, unfortunately, all of our summative assessments this semester for right now have been presentations, or like even our final exam, like we've completely changed that. Presentations or writing, and we've leaned towards the untimed to kind of eliminate any kind of discrepancies. Or my internet was bad. Like we did one timed writing assessment, and about halfway through, I realized that was a really bad idea and interrupted the class while they were doing it to tell them that it was no longer time. So we're well aware of some of those advantages.
Right.
We've been trying to avoid that at all possible. But that's history. It's easier for us to do it than some other classes. So I can't speak for other departments.
Sure.
We have a question from Ms. Anderson, and it's how will the 4 groups be divided, alpha or year in class, freshman, sophomore, junior?
Right. Sorry, my sister's calling me there. So what there's actually a kind of a 2-step answer to that. What we did first at this stage in the process is just divide it up straight by alphabet, right? To figure out our 25% cohorts. But we ran that through our master schedule to see what that did for our class sizes. We know that what we're going to have to do in order to get 25% cohorts that have the minimum number of overage, for each period, is adjust those a little bit by kid. So it's not going to be a simple, clear, like all kids who are in this alphabetical range are in the O group, and all kids who are in this alphabetical range are in the P group. We're going to have to be a little bit more savvy with it than that. So we optimize our class sizes. We're playing with that internally right now, but we really can't go a lot further with that until we know exactly what student population we're talking about. Once we figure that out, we're actually partnering with somebody who has developed an algorithm. We're meeting with them tomorrow morning to help us kind of get the optimal group. So what is it going to look like? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Okay, that's a good question.
The next question, I don't think we figured out, but it's possibly quite doable. But I don't know because I'm not a part of the group that will be sectioning kids out. Will siblings in different grades be attending on the same day? I think that's yet to be determined.
Honest that we're going to be able to do that perfectly, just because of the level of play, but that's a very reasonable consideration for families. So let's bring that to our, Chris, we have that meeting tomorrow morning. Let's bring that to that group and see what we can work out, see how we can make that work. Yeah.
Are there any, I don't see any other questions in the chat box right now, but these are good questions, really giving us food for thought. Oh, here's one. Oh, this is a continuation of the question about, hold on, try to make sure I'm capturing it. Okay, this goes back to the sibling question, and it was just saying, especially to keep it straight since the days are different each week, I think to avoid some of the confusion and for transportation. Those are some good points. Greg is going to take that back to his team when they meet tomorrow. Then we have another question, Misty.
Here, let me just ask.
I like saying your name if you say, why did you always say my name?
You can just say it over and over. That's just fine. One other thing that might come up, and I know this has happened at D90 a little bit, around guidance for traveling. As different things come up, and I know we'll be past the holiday season, but there are still families who are using this remote time to get away. Will there be guidance that says, hey, my kid, we went out of town. Are we going to ask families to quarantine? Are we going to have recommendations on that? And if something has to quarantine, do they get to automatically flip to the fully remote learning option? I'm assuming yes, but that could be something to bring up because I know accountability is super big in the community right now. So another thing to maybe mention.
Okay, good. Karen, did you get that? Thanks. This is some really good feedback. This is extremely helpful. The question is, will there, that's the one you just asked, will there be guidance?
Yeah, that was
one of the reasons we said we would start back remote and not having hybrid immediately after winter break, because we know that there will be some people who are traveling. And so we won't start before January the 19th for that reason.
Yeah, but I mean, I know that with sports, right? There are kids, my kid is one of them, right? There's, if private sports are happening, club sports are happening, there are tournaments that happen out of state. So
Right.
how do you know?
They should quarantine when they come back.
Well,
So that's a
at
good
this
thing to
point,
take
the
back.
recommendation from the state is if you leave suburban Cook County, you need to quarantine when you come back.
Yeah, and
Right.
Don't go to Oak Brook.
and I'm sure everybody is aware that some new tier 3 mitigations were sent out today about indoor sports and activities.
Definitely.
Are there any other questions, comments, feedback? Wow. Any, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm switching back and forth through screens. Did I see another hand? Here's one. It says, I appreciate the plan. It covers a lot and allows flexibility, which is good. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any other comments, feedback? We welcome you to join the board meeting on Thursday when we present the plan. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barbados. Okay, I got a couple of comments here, Mr. Davis. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barbados. Like this, everybody can see it says she's appreciate the work that's being done. She knows that it's hard and uncomfortable, but it will get easier as we move forward. We agree. Thank you for that. Any other comments from anyone? Okay, wow. Then let's go back to the agenda. I hope this group knows that if you think of something after this meeting is over, do not hesitate to shoot me an email. I will share it with the team. So we got the feedback. We are so way ahead of schedule. We thought we'd still be here another half hour. So I'll just talk about our next steps. We will present to the board Thursday night, get some additional feedback from them, and then, excuse me, we'll go back and make any changes. We'll incorporate some of the information we've heard tonight as well. And so when then we'll present again to you on December the 1st, based upon the changes in the feedback that we've heard. And then we'll go to the board on December the 3rd and ask for approval. When we ask for approval, because we have committee of the whole first, that we will only ask approval in the special board meeting, which will follow that meeting. But we'd appreciate as many of you as possible being here, so we can thank you because this has been great. Your feedback has been, as we said earlier, invaluable. And so if nobody has any objections, we could give you some time back tonight. Karen is dancing. Lisa, there's a lot of information in the chat. Does this capture the private chat as well? Okay, one more last thought. Hold on. It says, for the presentation, maybe spend more time on the metrics, especially those that will impact hybrid. Good point. Good point. Thank you. Lisa, does it cover the private chat questions as well? When this records the private, it does. Thank you. Because there's some questions in there as well that we can use to prepare for Thursday night. So if there are no objections, as board president by
Dr. Pruitt, there's a question from Ms. Anderson.
Oh, I missed that. Hold on. Let me go back into the chat. It was just the last one I read. Oh, there it is. Oh, have we looked into the FDA-approved clear mask product for teachers? We do have some clear masks that we actually received, the face shields, I guess you call them, that we received from ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, and FEMA. We do have those, but I would have to check, and if we haven't, we can look into the clear mask, because that way, it's my understanding, they can see the teacher as he or she is teaching, but we do have the face shields.
One thing to mention, this is Misty again jumping in. I mean, I have a friend whose daughter is hearing impaired and requires heavily on lip reading.
Right.
So the clear mask is pretty imperative, because for this child specifically, and equity, you know, transcends all things, right? If she's in a class and a teacher has a mask and she can't lip read, you know, there's some severe disadvantages even in her remote learning. And the last comment on metrics, I swear I'll shut up. You know, what might be helpful, especially for the community, to help envision what these metrics mean, is to retroactively look at these metrics and say, had we had this plan and these metrics in place August 1, how many days would we have been in school this last semester? How many days of semester 1 did we hit these metrics, right? I think that might help people kind of wrap their head around the attainability and where we were in terms of what the metrics might look like in place, right? Like, would we have been in school 2 weeks in first semester, the majority of first semester? How attainable and realistic are these? I think that might be helpful for people to visualize those metrics. Just a thought.
Thank you. And then the students, are there any questions? One of the questions is, we would like to hear from the students if you have any comments that you'd like to make. I can't see them.
I think it looks good. I don't really have any objections, I guess. I don't understand some of the more like, I don't know, institutional lingo, but as much as I can understand it, looks fine.
Thank you. Any other students want to make a comment? Maya says she thinks it looks good. Thank you, Maya. Anyone else? Okay. I was about to say that, in the words of Board Member Spivey, can I get a motion to adjourn? No one? Oh, I saw one.
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second.
Third, fourth.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.